Hello and welcome to this recorded version of this masterclass. I am Rafat Fields, your host, and I'm thankful for your time as we sit through understanding where we are on the federal public healthcare system policy landscape. Specifically, we're going to walk through HR 1, formerly known as One Big Beautiful Bill, out in the circles. And we're going to talk about, more importantly, what this means for where we are today and what to expect as we prepare for all that is coming for us in 2026. As we do the work to build our practice, we want to make sure that we are preparing to serve and advocate for the system that supports us and our clients as we do this work together. On this recorded version, you won't get to hear the intro music, but let that be inspiration to join us live on the next session. In addition to the policy breakdown and then transitioning to what that means at the state layers, I'm going to give you some insight into what we've been working on in Power to Rise and extended invitation and leave you with a valuable resource to get you going along your way. In case we have not yet met out on the ground, whether it's at a conference, a convening, or at a Hill Day, the things that I want you to know most about me are: one, I am not a deep policy expert. I'm not a Washington insider by any stretch of the imagination. I am someone who has spent the better part of the last 20 years walking alongside healthcare providers and others in the healthcare system as you do this work on the ground, pouring deeply into the patients and their families and making sure that they have what they need to access quality care. And in doing that, especially in the public healthcare system, when we look at programs like Medicaid and Medicare, so much of what you can do is empowered or provisioned by the policy that supports those programs. And so over the years, as I've done my work in supporting many of you, I've also become more deeply interested in learning about how our policy structures support these programs and where we have opportunities to be a bridge to improve the system. In addition to the time that I've spent directly working in healthcare, I also have a deep love for technology. And as I have studied the innovations that have come forward in other markets and other industries, I've seen tremendous opportunity to bring some of that innovation into healthcare, especially as our industry becomes more and more driven by consumer behavior every single day. As we evolve from this framework of a patient to a consumer, that brings even more tremendous opportunity to introduce some of the technologies that we've grown accustomed to in other industries into how we engage and interact within the healthcare system. If you look over the entire storyline of my career, what you'll find is deep product commercialization, training teams, and then influencing policy outcomes through partnering with organizations and walking side by side with those impacted by those policy decisions. As we get started, I share this with you from my home in the Phoenix, Arizona area, which is a beautiful desert landscape and one built upon tribal grounds. And one of the beautiful parts of the journey of living here is I've encountered that often when we have meetings and we come together, honoring that the lands that we stand upon were once inhabited by others and making room for their story as we move forward with ours. And so, as I expand upon that and starting with that rich culture of Native American history, I look back at my own ancestry. I look back at those who have walked before me, who have inspired me, and I put just a small few of those here on this slide. I wonder if there are any that resonate with you. And if not, I'll invite you to call forward the memory of those who do inspire you. You can hit pause and just hold space for them and let that inspiration be fuel for you as you consider how you want to move forward in advocating for policy adjustments in the future. Let's take a beat and talk about what's going on with HR 1. It has officially passed. The president signed it into law over the 4th of July weekend. And what that really means is that the sandbox, the container, the outer layer, if you will, has been built. Where we are in the process is that the bill, which was actually broader than Medicaid and Medicare, just for clarity, it is a large package that impacts many areas, but specifically, we're going to talk through what is changing through the lens of the Medicaid program. What's important to understand is that while the bill does outline changes and what to expect, there is still more to come. There are more processes that will need to happen, even at the federal layer. But consider it a heads up to the states about what is changing, what the overall parameters are going to be, and the actions that they need to start preparing themselves for. By 2026, you'll see some states will take action on it faster than others. But the thing that you have to understand is that when it comes to Medicaid, it's going to be a state by state implementation. Now, HR 1 is the instruction sheet, but think of it more as the summary. They still have to go back through a process of rulemaking and finalizing things through public comments and rolling out more detailed procedures of how to implement some of these changes. The biggest things to be aware of are the work requirement. That is a big one, and it has been the topic of debate over many administrations. This is not the first time that it has come up, but now that it has been signed into law, you can expect to see that all of the states are going to integrate the work requirements into their individual state Medicaid programs. In tandem to the work requirements, there are also changes to the verification process. Now, during the pandemic, some of these had been relaxed, and you didn't have to go through eligibility verification to demonstrate that you are eligible to remain a Medicaid beneficiary. What HR 1 does is shorten the time or increase the frequency, if you will, of the number of times per year you have to go through this re-verification process. The ultimate result of this is we expect to see many people lose their eligibility and to fall off of being covered by Medicaid as a result of these policy changes. Another change that comes from HR 1 is the loss of provisions that were brought about in the Affordable Care Act. And this is that exchange where there's a population of people who may be working, who may be bringing in income of some level. However, they fall in that gap of they don't quite meet the income requirement to be eligible for the state Medicaid program. However, they also don't have employer-based insurance or insurance that they can afford through that employer. So they fall in between spaces. And the Affordable Care Act made it so that they could access a subsidized version of health insurance, and it was part of the Medicaid program. But with HR 1, that provision is going away. And so you can expect to see another segment of people who had coverage through the Affordable Care Act plans now lose their eligibility as well. Overall, the net impact is far more people will lose their coverage under the Medicaid program. And those people are still going to need to access care. Now, all of this is at the federal level. And now that the bill has passed, there's another set of process that needs to happen to finalize the rules and the procedures. So the states have been given a heads up to expect that these changes will need to be in effect by 2026. But there's a lot of detail in the how to apply the letter of the provisions in HR 1. You can expect to see a lot of activity in terms of public comments as HHS and CMS at the federal layer continue to seek input to give more details on the guidelines. But ultimately, implementation will happen at the state level. And that means that the individual state Medicaid programs are going to start their own process within their respective states of gathering stakeholders, reviewing resources, and building plans to implement and transition the Medicaid program that they have today into being in compliance with what is outlined in HR 1. And that is the work that all of us get to consider. How do we take on a state of readiness to help these individual Medicaid programs do this work thoughtfully, even as we bring more voices to the table to advocate for future policy change? There is going to be a period in which the work is being done to implement, what's laid out in HR 1. And it's important that all of us do what we can to bring our voices, our thought leadership, and the voices of those that we serve closer to these regulatory tables as that work of implementation and building out the state level plans is getting underway. So, as we think about this as a broader opportunity, I want you to consider this. These aren't small changes. They're actually quite sizable changes that are coming through from the program that we have right now to meet the standard of what's being defined by HR 1. That means that if you have healthcare expertise or experience in helping the community navigate through the public healthcare system, this is an excellent time to bring your experience forward because you are needed. The federal team needs you, the state team needs you, the local teams need you. It is going to be all hands on deck. It will truly take the entire village to evolve the public healthcare system to how it's been defined by HR 1. And more importantly, we need the voices of those who understand the people who are impacted and who are providing the care to vocalize around what these changes will mean for both the providers and the patient consumers, caretakers, extended family. We need to be able to share the stories of what our public healthcare programs like Medicaid are already doing and what is going to happen as we deepen these coverage gaps within our community. So that leads us to digital visibility. So we know that you can't be all the places all the time. However, it's extremely helpful that as you are contributing your perspective, your thought leadership in one place, whether it's the state or federal layer, having that digital visibility helps in the sharing process and making sure that we can get that insight to more policy making tables, even if you're not yet inside of that room. What do we expect to be on the horizon for the rest of 25? Well, as I share this with you, Congress is wrapping up their August recess and they'll be headed back to Washington, D.C. for September. They'll be looking at line items of the budget, allocation, and continuing to pull through that work that was started by HR 1. There's still quite a bit more of negotiation into final funding packages that we can expect to see them deeply engaged in for the rest of session. You can expect to see a lot of postings for requests for information as they go through this rulemaking process. You expect to see them in healthcare. You can expect to see them in technology. We already are starting to see some things around AI, digital technology ecosystems. We can expect to see more conversations, more discussions, and more tables being convened around all of these key topics. And then finally, state implementation is so important. Now, when we look at the timeline of how the cycles work, timing is everything. We're going to head there next. So as we think about this shift of what can we do to impact state policy, it's important to understand that we're operating at a point in the timeline for the year, which most state legislative sessions have concluded. But that doesn't mean that the state legislators aren't available or aren't having conversations or meeting with people. It just means that the committees and the voting process is not underway right now. I would say this is perhaps the better time to try to extend conversations, relationship building, development in these spaces, especially as we prepare for coming out of that federal landscape of getting the bill from HR 1 into the conversations that will be happening in 2026 state legislative sessions. So using this in-between space as an opportunity to understand what are the dynamics in each particular state, what are the demographics, how will this bill and funding package impact us at our state level? How do we look at bringing some storytelling and sharing of voices, having open dialogues and conversations? How do we support bringing people around the table and sharing those thoughts in preparation for the work that is coming as we get into the sessions that will be kicking off next year? A really important opportunity in this preparation for state level work in 2026 is looking at the state's that may have filed legislation in 25 or even a couple of years prior in anticipation of shifts in the market, if we look at where bills have been filed that could run in tandem with some of the changes that have been set forth in HR 1, there's a lot of learning to be had, because often if a piece of legislation is successful in one state, it's not uncommon to see it pop up in another state in similar form. So part of what we can do to get ready for 26 is think about the topics and the areas that are relevant to the programs that we care about most, and then think about what legislation could we anticipate and what would be the best vehicle. Like if that legislation were going to run in my state, how would it support or not support the people that I serve and care about? And what could we do to bring more voices to the table, to bring the feedback that will help ensure that the policy that goes forward is reflective of the needs of the community? So at Power to Rise, one of the things I'm going to say is share your thought leadership. Make sure you are thinking about your lens on the world. What are you uniquely positioned to see well? And making sure that you're publishing that content in a place that is visible and shareable, that it becomes a resource that can be pointed to, passed out, handed along. The more that we share our stories and we share our data and we share where we're finding successes, the simpler it's going to be to build this momentum in 26, as we have to be very successful at working at the micro and macro levels at the same time. So as you're publishing this content, making sure that you are citing that as you engage in public comment cycles, signing on and supporting other organizations and coalitions in terms of letter writing campaigns, and making an intentional effort to facilitate dialogue with your legislators is extremely important. At Power to Rise, we believe in your platform. We believe in creating digital ecosystems that support you as you are serving your community, your audience. We believe that having things like a website and a social media platform, and perhaps you have a blog or a podcast where you are regularly sharing insights and resources that not only help your audience with the work that you do in the community, but also help others spread the word of the great work that you're doing. The more that we build these digital ecosystems and we interconnect them and we help elevate and lift these stories within our communities and beyond, the simpler advocating for change going to become. We believe the digital ecosystems can be built to support the work and the movement at the same time. And we've created a simple process to walk you through getting to that place. We start with discovery and peeling through the layers of who you are and what you're already doing, who you serve. And then we start bringing intention to mapping out how we can put technology around you to do this at scale and boost your momentum, to expand the reach of your voice, to expand the number of people who understand the impact that you are creating out in your community. Some of the deliverables that we create out of this is having an official brand identity, carving out your space on the digital world. We do that through name and logo. We also do that through creating a website, and we give you a customized report to help you understand your baseline and the strategy for where you're navigating to as you do this work. The great news is we love walking alongside you and helping you see more clearly that, one, you already have a brand. We're here to help you put a little more lift underneath the work that you're doing so that the impact you're already creating is reaching more rooms where funding is being allocated, policy decisions are being made, and that you are recognized as an important voice to shaping what's next for your community. If you'd like to have a conversation about what that looks like for you, go ahead, take advantage. That QR code is there. Schedule a complimentary session. We'd love to talk. If you want to learn more about Power to Rise, who we are, what we do, or you just want to say hello, you can reach out via email or visit us at our website, powertorise.com. Thank you for spending time with me. I hope that this policy breakdown was simple and helpful. HR 1 is a very complex bill. It's hundreds of pages long and there are a lot of details in there. What I hope that you got out of this was a very simple, high level place of understanding where we are for the federal policy landscape, what you can expect to hear in conversations coming up over the next few weeks. And from there, I hope you're able to better determine where your time and energy is best spent advocating for your clients, for your community. Because that answer is going to be very different depending on who you are and what you do. There is no right or wrong answer, simply the answer that feels most aligned for you. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Send them our way. And until next time, thank you for the work that you do in helping our community thrive and stay healthy. We'll talk soon.